Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to That Pedal Show, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with one of my musical heroes and good friends, Mr. Steven Wilson. Thank you so much for your time today, mate. Really appreciate it. Okay, so a lot of you guys will know Steven's work with Porcupine Tree and his incredible solo albums. So, what I want to ask you about first of all, as a producer,
right?
How does being a producer inform the way you go about creating your guitar sounds?
Well, I mean, quite simply, I'm not interested in being a guitar player,
Right.
So to explain what I mean by that, I'm interested in the way the guitar can become part of the fabric of the music rather than being a guitar hero. So I guess I'm always looking for, first and foremost, interesting sounds and interesting tones. Particularly, I'm not the greatest guitar player, so for me, it's all about having sounds that are in service to the song and interesting sounds. So when I go out on the road, I'm kind of giving myself a bit of a headache because I have to recreate all these sounds that I created with a kind of combination of pedals and digital manipulation and plugins. So some of those sounds that are also that kind of rely on plugins, becomes a challenge to try and recreate those. And it's not always about recreating them exactly. It's about coming up with something that kind of fulfills a similar role.
That works in a live context.
Yeah. And sometimes simplicity is more effective live. The subtleties aren't going to come across anyway.
Sure.
So I've kind of, over the years, I've realised, although you might not know it by looking at this rig, this is a simplicity for me. Because, as you know, I've had more complicated setups. But what we have here is quite simple, really. I mean, I love modulation effects. I love things like vibrato, tremolo, and the Leslie simulation. So 3 of the pedals are taking care of those 3 things. And then I've got the delay, the reverb, a couple of distortions, and that's about it, really. So it's not that complicated, really. Simplicity, but it's amazing what you can do. I have the octave pedal as well, the micro. It's amazing what you can do, just with these kind of tools.
And combinations of those, and
Yeah.
Can we hear? Because I love your modulation sounds and the vibrato sounds that you use. Can we hear some of those?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the sort of sounds I use a lot, just as rather than using just a straight clean sound, I have my regulation clean sound has got vibrato on it. So it's got that slightly more lonely kind of Nordic quality.
The Lonely Swede.
The Lonely Swede, yeah. And that's just a little bit of a little bit of vibrato and a touch of delay. And that's really my standard clean sound, as opposed to being a clean sound. It's actually got, most of the time I go to the clean sound, I've got this vibrato, just to give it a little bit of colour, So it's not a completely flat sound, and it complements, Dave's sounds as well. So that's
beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's the diamond vibrato pedal. And then as variations to that, my other module, the trem sound. So that's
a great shape to that. Awesome.
But it's quite an extreme trem. The amplitude, if that's the right word, of the curve is quite extreme. And again, it's just, I don't use this sound a lot, but when I do, it's effective, And then my final modulating sound is the one where I use the Option 5 rotor, Leslie's.
Yep.
I use a lot of real Leslie cabinet in the studio. I think anything sounds good through Leslie. Voice, guitar, piano, Hammond, you name it, it sounds great through as Leslie. So there's a lot of tones on my records where they are going through Leslie cabinets, and so I use the Option 5. It's that's the fast setting. Beautiful. And then I use it also in slow setting as well.
I've got to say, that Bad Cat with effects, it just takes effects so beautifully.
Yeah.
It really the detail.
They really speak, don't they?
Yeah, amazing.
And I should add probably that on almost all of these clean sounds too, I've got just a touch of compression. and sometimes a little bit of EQ too. So I'm using the Source Audio programmable EQ.
It's a really clever little unit, this.
It is fantastic. The idea that you've got 4 different settings and you can, using the Gig Rig G2, of course, I can choose whichever of those 4 I want on a particular patch. That's been fantastic. Sometimes the clean sounds just need a little bit of extra top end to make them really splang, Yeah, so that's the Leslie slow or... So that's most of my beloved, modulation effects.
Okay. And of course, there's your dynamic range in your songs is just extraordinary. I was just saying we were here at Soundcheck and we heard Routine, which just gets me every time. That's a great example of how you can go the subtlety, and then it just goes so heavy, but it's all part of a beautifully written composition, and it's amazing. So if we start looking at some of the heavier gain type sounds and how you're achieving those.
Well, I'm using the Gig Rig to the 2 output option there to switch between the 2 channels on the Bad Cat. Now the Bad Cat is, as I understand it, fairly unique in this respect, in that the 2 channels are always simultaneously active.
Right.
So you're not switching the amp. What you're doing instead is using the G2 to tell the patch which input it's going into, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, here's an example, just a sort of straight dirty. So when Routine suddenly takes off for the first time. And that's just the amp. Actually, it's a tiny little bit delay, but that's just the amp. And I'm also using, which is one thing I love about the G2, the pre and post gain. This is fantastic because it means that you can have your amp set on one, gain setting, but you can use the amount of gain that you send into that channel to get so many different kinds of distortion. So that's that's relatively clean. I'm using the post gain to dial the input down quite a lot. Same channel with more gain. Sound much heavier. So there's no change. Same channel on the amp, no pedals in there. It's just literally the amount of gain that the G2. So, and I love that. That's given me so many more options as regards different gain settings. And then sometimes I use the micropog to put the extra octave in below, which gives me these. I use that a lot on a song called Ancestral, particularly. It's a wonderfully clean octave. It gives you that microphone.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's also it's polyphonic as well, so you can play chords and it doesn't, it's a great little thing.
It's fabulous. Yeah.
That is brilliant. And I think a lot of guys would also be interested to know you are running your time-based effects, your delay and your reverb, straight into the front of the amplifier.
Yes, I am.
Channel.
Yes, I am. Personally, I love the sound of reverb into a distorted, into a gain channel. The thing is, I grew up listening to Neil Young records.
Right, yeah, of course.
And, you listen to all those great Neil Young sounds, that reverb, really sort of breaking up and distorting and all that kind of ring modulation you get between the effect and the source sound. I love it. I've always, or at least for the last 10 years or so, I've always had my reverb as part of the, the preamp side of it. And you get these, and the delay too, and you get these wonderful kind of nasty, well, not nasty, but...
they're very colourful.
Yeah, I don't know how you describe it really, but... A lot of people might think, oh, it's ugly, it's all breaking out, and it is, but it's got attitude to it, you know what I mean? And of course, you only need the tiniest little bit of mix on the delay because the gain is...
It's compressing already, so anything it receives, that's fantastic. Wow. Listen, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Just one last thing. If you could offer one little piece of wisdom to all the guitar players, songwriters, that, who want to start developing their own sound, as you have done, what would that be?
Oh, well, I think that a lot of my approach to guitar, as you kind of previously alluded to, comes from the fact that I'm a producer first and a musician kind of second or even third, So I have a very kind of skewed perspective. I think what disappoints me slightly when I hear some other guitar players is not that they're not fantastic musicians, but that they haven't explored the possibilities of sound design. And so the tones start to sound very generic to me a lot of the time.
Similar.
Yeah, similar. And I think what was nice about the old guys from the 60s and 70s is they all had kind of unique... It wasn't easy to just go and buy your sound off the shelf. Sure. And so consequently they developed their own musical vocabulary and their own sound. And I miss that side of things a little bit now because it's so easy to get the whatever sound or this sound or that sound. And I think a lot of that is just exploring the use of pedals and maybe using them not necessarily using them in the prescribed way. Like me, I'm putting my reverb and delay in front of the gain and all that stuff. And not doing things by the book. And I think in a way it's important, if you are going to explore, pedals, I guess you've got to be the writer as well. And that's something, and I kind of say that knowing that is the advantage I have, because I write the material. It's harder when you're going into a session situation, I know, to suddenly come up with all these bizarre, crazy sounds. But I write the material around the fact that I am a producer and a sound designer. I guess I miss that a little bit from a unique sort of approach to sound design, not playing. You can go on YouTube and can find any number of kids that can shred, to Kingdom Come. But they're all using the same sound.
I've just been at NAMM and I've been surrounded by that sound for a week, and it's I don't know if it's advice, but that's something I certainly miss, I think, in the currents. Guys that maybe think about more the sonic aspects of playing rather than just the technical aspects. That is brilliant advice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys, we'll see you later.
Yeah.